Hello, welcome to Book Squirrel, and this is my 20 top ranked Black Book TBR tier list. Book Squirrel. I don't know. I've done two other videos like this for sci-fi books and horror books, and I decided as I've been reading that I have too many white men on my TBR list. And unfortunately, over the last 2 months, I've read two books that are written by white men, have black characters as some of their main characters, and then there's just a lot of poor treatment of that character without there really even being a social commentary on it, and it just felt really gratuitous and gross. And I realized that I need more black voices and female voices on my TBR list. So that's what inspired this video. I am going to keep the format the same as the last two videos, but I do want to point out how problematic it can be for a white male to be critiquing the works of black creators, especially with cultural dynamics as they have been. And while I am going to keep the format the same, I am going to be much more considerate of my respect to these creators. In those other videos, I would be much quicker to just kind of make a joke at the book's expense, and that's not going to happen this time, okay? I acknowledge my position here, and that's why before we even get started, I really would like for you to check out the channels of the Black Booktubers whose content helped me create this list. And those channels would be Lex Reads, Kayla's Bookish Vibes, Black Lit Geek, Rebecca, and Being Daphne. I was originally thinking that I would do this video in February, which is Black History Month, but honestly, I think all of the attention that we give during Black History Month should be to black voices, and besides, we should be reading black books and consuming black created content throughout the year. So I figured it would be better if I did this as soon as possible, add these voices to my TBR list, and just get the ball rolling. There's no reason to wait. Unlike my other videos, as I read these books, I do plan on doing reviews of them. Again, these are going to be reviews from a white guy, so I think it's probably best if you want to get more of an in-depth understanding of all of these books to find black creators who have reviewed these. But as I do read them and review them myself, I will put the links down in the description. All right, let's get to the tier list. First up, we have Ace of Spades by Farida Abikelamide, and I'm putting this instantly into adequately hyped. Effectively, this book is about two black students at a school in line to become valedictorian when suddenly a mysterious character starts releasing secret information about them and stacks the cards against them. So there's a lot of mystery here, and I really love the cover. I think I'm a big fan of decks of cards, and I love the way that they've modeled the cover off of that. It gives me the school vibes that I'm looking for with this book, and I don't know, I'm really intrigued. I'm really intrigued by this one. So adequately hyped. All right, next up we have Americanah by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. And I'm going to put this into super hyped right away. Okay, I'm very intrigued by this book. I love the peacock feather cover, and effectively this book is about two lovers who move out of Nigeria into various parts of the world, specifically the United States and London. And for the first time, they're really having to grapple with a culture that views them very differently than their home. And I feel like that's an important story that I want to hear. And also, it sounds like the one who moves to London goes into a very dangerous and undocumented lifestyle, which I'm very excited to read about. Super hyped for this one. All right, up next is Another Country by James Baldwin, and I am putting this one in basic level interest. I like the cover, I like the music aspect of it. I'm a big fan of jazz, and this book seems to be about passion and love and crossing racial lines and all these things through love and art. The blurb was a little short, so I wasn't entirely sure what I'm going to be getting out of this, and it is about 450 pages, I think, which is a healthy sized book. Compared to some of these other stories, I'm not as excited about this one. It does seem like there is that this story does have a setting in Harlem and even in France, and so I just find that to be also very exciting too. I want to have more of a understanding of the Harlem Renaissance, and I don't know, I am looking forward to this book. The next book is The Blacker the Berry by Wallace Thurman. And I am very intrigued by this book. This is going into super hyped. This book was recommended by multiple videos that I watched, and effectively it's about a very dark-skinned girl who grew up in Boise, Idaho, and she really struggles even within her own community to feel accepted, primarily because of the insane racism that is incredibly prevalent around her. And I find the cover to be beautiful. It's very evocative. It's so interesting how this bird has a flower going through them. This is a book that I would be very, very interested in picking up right away and starting. So that's why it's under the super hyped category. All right, up next is The Book of Harlan by Bernice L. McFadden, and I am going to put this book in concerned. Now here's the reason why. This book effectively takes place in Nazi-occupied Paris. And so I'm only just concerned for the emotional journey that I'm going to be going on with this book. The fact that we've got this cover that really shows an authentic look at a human. It's not trying to be overly artistic in any way. It's just saying this is going to be a raw story. I'm looking forward to reading this book to expand my understanding of the Black experience around the world throughout time. This seems like it's going to be a very intense read. I'm sure that a lot of these are going to be that way, but I'm just speaking my feelings. My perspective on life is that if someone had to experience something horrible firsthand, the least I can do is to look at what happened and observe it for the sake of the person that had to go through it. A lot of these books I've included for that reason, but this one in particular feels like it's really gonna hit hard. So yeah, concerned. All right, next is The Cancer Journals by Audre Lorde. And I'm putting this one into adequately hyped. First of all, this won a Stonewall Book Award in 1981, which means something to me as a queer person. And I love the mix of patterns. I love the use of vibrant colors here. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what she has to say regarding her experiences with cancer. That's effectively what this book is about. It's a relatively short book, and I do love short books. The recommendation of this book came with the awareness that Audre's speaking from a very difficult experience here. And so she's speaking from a very raw place. And similar to what I mentioned with the Book of Harlan, one of the reasons why I'm choosing these books is because I want to have that unfiltered perspective. And I really feel like I'm definitely going to get that with the Cancer Journals. And so I'm really just kind of looking forward to her unfiltered voice in this book, which is why I have it as adequately hyped. All right, so up next is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. The first introduction I really had to Maya Angelou was Monet Exchange on Drag Race, portraying Maya Angelou for the comedy challenge, The Snatch Game. And RuPaul asks her, why does the caged bird sing? And Monet says, as Maya,
because Mariah Carey lost the key.
Ever since then, I've been intrigued. I just unfortunately haven't gone to the lengths of picking up this book. I would say I'm adequately hyped for sure. I don't know if it's autobiographical or not, but effectively this book surrounds a girl named Maya, grows up in a small southern town, has to experience a lot of bigotry, a lot of other people imposing their definitions of who she is upon her, and then over time eventually finds her own voice, her own strength. Through that journey, she's able to free herself from those experiences of being a kid. That's all in the blurb. I'm not speaking as someone who's read this book, just as someone who's read the blurb. I think the cover is beautiful. I like the shade of orange and the yellows that they have. I don't know. I'm excited for this book, and it's about time I read it. Come on. All right, up next we have In West Mills by Deshaun Charles Winslow, and I'm going to put this at basic level interest. It seems to be set in a rural town in North Carolina over a period of time, and focuses on a woman who has really expressed her freedom over time, and then becomes a mother and is starting to realize that her freedom as the blurb says, has come at a cost. And she meets a man who is willing to help her out, but then he also has some kind of thing with his past that kind of catches up. So it sounds like a good book. I mean, I'm looking forward to reading it if this is what is chosen. I think the cover is absolutely beautiful. Again, I'm obsessed with how much vibrancy is in these covers. The flowers, the blue versus against the yellow. I just think it looks really beautiful. But nothing is really catching my interest to a great degree, so I put it at basic level interest. All right, up next we have James by Percival Everett, and I'm instantly jumping this up to super hyped, and primarily this is because of a few reasons. One, it's gotten a lot of accolades already. This year, it's the winner of the Pulitzer, and last year it won the National Book Award, which is already very exciting. This is effectively a retelling of the adventures of Huckleberry Finn, but through the perspective of the character Jim, who's enslaved. And I think that is the way this story should be told, frankly. I think that is the voice that needs to be heard more than Huckleberry's. We all know Huckleberry's. So I'm really excited to jump into this book when I get to it. I have heard that it is a very difficult read because of the triggers and because of the history. So I am prepared for that. I find this to be really interesting. I'm really looking forward to having this one be chosen when it's time. So the next book we have is Toni Morrison's Jazz, which I am moving up to adequately hyped. Toni Morrison is probably better known for her books Beloved or The Bluest Eye, both of which I haven't read either. But in the videos I watched that were recommending Toni Morrison's book, I did see jazz mentioned a couple times. And I, as someone who loves jazz so much, it's one of my favorite genres of music, I'm really intrigued to read this book particularly. The blurb didn't tell me a whole lot about what this book was about. There does seem to be a murder, and that seems to be what maybe kicks off this story. But what I'm really looking forward to is the view of the Harlem jazz generation, which seems to be a big focal point of this book. So that's the reason why I'm adequately hyped. Plus, I mean, look at this purple with the jazz. These books can't go wrong in my opinion with the covers because they're just so colorful. So yeah, Toni Morrison's Jazz is inadequately hyped. Okay, the next book on this list is Let Us Descend by Jesmyn Ward, and I'm putting this up in adequately hyped. It feels weird to say hyped for some of these books because of the topics. These are just the language that I use in my other videos as well. It's just weird. I just want to say that right now. So this book is effectively about a girl in the pre-United States Civil War era where she is being sold into slavery, and she's having to go on a trek from the Carolinas to New Orleans and into the slavery system in Louisiana at a sugar plantation. So I feel like, based off of the accolades of this book, based off of the theme of this book, this is a story I want to understand more. I want to read this book. So I definitely am adequately hyped for this. The cover again is beautiful. The story seems like it's going to be very raw, and these are voices that need to be heard. This is why I'm reading this is why I'm putting this together, and this book feels like one of those real modern staples of this storytelling. It was published in 2023, so it's very new, and it was on Oprah's book club, and it's considered to be one of the best books of 2023, New York Times bestseller. So it's got a lot going for it when it comes to modern accolades, for what that's worth. But it does make me hyped to read this book and to hear this story. Okay, so up next we have Not Without Laughter by Langston Hughes. This was one that was recommended by a couple of the videos I watched, so I am looking forward to reading this. I would say that I have about a basic level interest of this book. Again, I really like this cover based off of the blurb. This is a coming of age story about a boy transitioning into manhood in the 1930s. And his family, and how they're all on their own journeys to make life work. It's a relatively short book, and I do look forward to reading it. Nothing in it really fully piques my interest to a huge degree, but I'm not uninterested in this book because of the people that have recommended this, and that it's Langston Hughes. I've heard that name, even though I don't know a whole lot about him. And so I have a basic level of interest in Not Without Laughter. Plus, what a great title. What an amazing title. Okay, next up we have Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. I am beating myself up already for not having included this in my sci-fi list, my sci-fi book TBR list. I'm making up for it by putting it on this list, and I'm moving this up to super hyped. Now, this is a book I've heard of many times, and yet I still really am fairly ignorant about it. But what's something that's really cool is that apparently this book takes place in like 2025, 2026. Even though this book was written about 30 years ago, we are going to be living in the time as predicted by Octavia E. Butler in this science fiction novel. This story surrounds this girl's hyper empathy towards other people in an age where vulnerability is seen as bad. Sounds kind of familiar, right? So I'm really looking forward to this. I'm purposefully trying to like block out knowledge of this book because I want to go into this fairly blind. And what I love is this one has a foreword by LeVar Burton. I, as a kid, watched a lot of Reading Rainbow, hosted by LeVar Burton, and I was a big fan of Star Trek Next Generation, where he is a main character. And I used to listen to his podcast where he reads short stories because he has such a great voice, and I just have such a nostalgic admiration for him. So for me, I'm very excited to put Parable of the Sower into my super hyped category. All right, next up we have Passing by Nella Larson. I'm going to put this one in the adequately hyped tier as well. Passing is effectively a book about two girls with a mixed racial heritage, one who can pass as light-skinned and gain privileges of appearing as white, while the other one who has darker skin doesn't really have that option, and she chooses more so to embrace her black heritage. And I find this to be such a compelling topic for a story, and it's a really short book, which again, I love short books. So I'm definitely adequately hyped for Passing. I look forward to reading this book, and I just find it so interesting. This idea that these two ladies who have very similar upbringings or very similar heritages have very different lives simply because of the pigmentation they were born with. But isn't that kind of the topic of this? I very much look forward to reading Passing. Okay, next book on the list is Perfect Peace by Daniel Black, and I am instantly jumping this up to super hyped. This premise sounds so fascinating. I am very excited to read this book. Effectively, the blurb of Perfect Peace speaks about how there's a mother who had 7 children. All of them were boys. When her 7th child is born, it's again a boy, and she decides that she's going to raise this child as the girl that she will never have. And on the child's 8th birthday, she reveals to the child that she was actually born a boy, and it causes everybody's understanding of life to just go into question. As a queer person, I am a big fan of any story that puts into question what does it even mean for gender to be assigned, and I am in love with this premise. I think this is fascinating. I'm really glad that I'm incorporating a lot of books that are about the Black voice, the Black story of living with racism in the United States. However, I also am really wanting to just put out the creative writers too that have just a story like this. I'm so intrigued by this book. So yeah, I put Perfect Peace by Daniel Black in the super hyped category. Okay, the next book on the list is Plum Bun by Jesse Redmond Fawcett, and I'm going to put this in adequately hyped as well. So this is actually kind of similar to Passing, it sounds like, where you have a character who is light-skinned enough that she is choosing to pass as white to gain those privileges of society that society has just deemed not allowable for people of dark skin. This is not a challenge that white people have to go through. They don't have to think, well, am I going to be authentic to myself regardless of the skin that I have? So I'm really excited to learn more about this book, and the blurb itself just sounds really fascinating. Plus, the story takes place in Harlem Renaissance, so I'm really looking forward to that aspect of this book as well. Okay, next up is Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. I am moving this to super hyped, and the reason why is because this story focuses on 2 men who were ex-convicts, and they are now living a life of freedom again when their two sons, who are gay and in a relationship are killed. And these two fathers come together to try to solve the murder of their gay boys, even though when their children were alive, they didn't seem to be the most accepting of their lifestyles. I already have chills. I am really looking forward to this perspective, this story. It's a thriller, and so I am super hyped for this book. Knowing the context of the queerness in this story, I think that this is going to be the book that I just choose to read this month. I've decided that every month I'm just going to choose one book. I typically let a wheel spin and choose randomly because I'm a big fan of random chaos magic. When I feel like I resonate with a concept so much, I decide that I'm going to just read it anyway. And I think Razorblade Tears might be that book for me this month. I can't not be just incredibly hyped for what this book has to offer. Also, apparently this was when this book came out, it was one of Barack Obama's favorite reads, so that's also very exciting. So yeah, that's Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. All right, next up is The Reformatory by Tananarive Due, and I'm putting this in super hyped as well. This is a horror thriller. It's about a young black boy named Robbie who kicks a white boy in defense of his sister and is sent to the Reformatory as punishment, which is in Florida at the time of Jim Crow in the 1950s. So as you can tell, there's going to be a lot of insanity happening to this child. I didn't pick a whole lot of books, I'm realizing, that focus specifically on Jim Crow South, and so I'm really interested to see this book, what this book has to offer, and it feels like there's this kind of supernatural element to it as well. So I'm super hyped for this book. I'm really interested to see what is in these pages. Okay, next up on the list is The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. And I'm going to put this in basic level interest. One, I live for the cover. I'm in love with all of the colors here and the use of vibrancy. The book sounds really interesting. It kind of sounds like Passing, to be honest, but this one follows twins, both who fled a small town in the South growing up. One who returns there to raise her child, and the other one who secretly passes as white. So it does seem to have a bit of a twist in that these are twins. It seems like they're focusing a lot on how their daughters are raised in these different lives, then coming together and intertwining. So that's interesting. I'm more interested in reading Passing than this. However, this is also another one of Barack Obama's favorite reads, which is really cool. I don't know, there's just something about it that's not intriguing me as much as Passing for some reason, and so I put it in a basic level interest, The Vanishing Half. And finally on this list, we have Waiting to Exhale by Terry McMillan, and this is another one that I'm going to put at basic level interest. I haven't seen the movie. I've heard the name a lot, but the blurb didn't say a whole lot about it. It seems to be kind of about a sisterhood of 4 women whose husbands have all kind of been a bit of a failure in their part, where they now free themselves of that tie, find this sisterhood, and pursue their own dreams. Love that storyline, but again, I really don't know much about this. I did hear that the movie is very accurate to the book, but I want to read the book first and then watch the movie. I think it's just the lack of the blurb that I'm not really feeling the ties to this one to that degree, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm not worried at all. I'm not concerned. And so that's why I put it in basic level interest. Again, amazing artwork. I love this cover so much. I just love art like this. It's so pretty. It's so colorful and pretty, and I love it. So that's the 20 books that I have on this list. This is not a comprehensive list, of course. A lot of these authors have a lot more books. And of course, there's plenty of other Black authors who have impacted the world through their writing. And feel free to recommend any book that I missed here that you think would be a good addition to this list. Have you read any of these books? And what were your thoughts on them? I'm really hyped about these books. I'm really excited for this list and for this reading. All right, and now it's time to spin the wheel to determine which book I'm going to read on this list first. And this will be my first book for the month of November. All right, here we go. I'm excited. Oh, Oh, Let Us Descend. All right. At first I thought it was going to be Not Without Laughter by Langston Hughes, but it is Let Us Descend by Jesmyn Ward. And that'll be my first book to read and review in November. As I do these, I will put the links in the description, but please look up more about these authors, look up their books, read them. I think many of us could really use a lot more Black authors on their TBR list throughout the year, okay? Not just February, throughout the year. All right, well, until next time, I hope you all have a wonderful whatever, and I will talk to you later. Bye. Da-da-da. Book squirrel. I don't know.